Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are in the country. Just want to welcome you all and thank you for joining today's webinar. This is Scott Fiaschetti from Geopath. Before we do really get started, I want to just wish everyone a truly warm and happy new year. And I hope that you all are having a great start to 2021. Sorry about that. Today, we're going to be talking about understanding Geopath's 2021 annual forecast. So each year, this is obviously a key deliverable that Geopath produces and releases, and it's essentially at the core of what we do. And in previous years, it was something that we worked on, developed, and released in just the normal course of the year. But given the past year and the impact of COVID-19, we felt that understanding the 2021 forecast has taken on more importance. And we wanted to make sure all of our members had the opportunity to really just gain a good understanding of how the impact of COVID-19 and ultimately recovery are informing the forecast for this year. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And today I'm joined with someone who you all know and love, Dylan Maven, who's our head of product. Just want to welcome Dylan.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And so overall with our agenda, what we want to cover today is obviously providing an overview of, how current and past travel trends have informed the 2021 annual forecast, as well as the impression variation dashboard. There's some really improvements to that, and we want to make sure everybody understands what those improvements are and ultimately what the impact that is to the dashboard itself and the reports that it will be producing. And then want to give everyone a review and an overview of the annual forecast rollout schedule, and then answer any questions in the sense of, we do want people to send us in questions. Today, we're actually not going to answer them in real time. We want to collect them. We're actually producing an FAQ document. We wanted to use this session today to really inform that document and allow us to really get the questions and really kind of give considered answers to the questions versus answering them in real time. So please do enter them into the Q&A widget in the Zoom user interface. But just know we're just going to be collecting them for today, and we'll try to answer any other specific questions in the FAQ and with the other documentation that we're going to be putting out to support this webinar and just the forecast overall. I'll talk about those near the end of the session as well. So just to take a step back and level set a bit, wanted to just kind of reinforce what we do and what Geopath impressions are traditionally used for us. So they're typically a forecasting metric, right, used to predict audience delivery for an out-of-home campaign. In doing that, we typically use historical trends to develop the forecast. And this has proven to be, over the years, very stable method of predicting travel patterns and ultimately informing the forecast. But with March 2020 and the onset of COVID-19, everything changed. But that doesn't mean that when we're creating the forecast, that understanding those current and past travel trends by market and how things have shifted within each market isn't important, because it is. It's very important, and it does inform the forecast. And that's that's where we want to start today, and where we want to focus on for a lot of the discussion is really helping everyone understand how we're looking at travel trends and how they are informing the forecast. And I'm going to hand it off to Dylan to talk about that, and then I'll come back in later.
Great, thanks, Scott. As Scott said, Happy New Year to everyone. Hope everyone's enjoying 2021 so far. I'm sure we're all glad that 2020 is over, but we're going to spend the next couple minutes talking about 2021 because we learned a lot, and where we're going in 2021 is based upon where we've been. So with that, might go to the next slide. Just as a nice source of reference, looking at monthly traffic volumes over the past couple of years, this information is from the Federal Highway Administration. You can see that we've had significant, constant increase over the past couple of years prior to COVID. But during the COVID period, there was a significant decrease of travel across the country. There was some recovery, significant recovery, but it has stabilized quite a bit over the past couple of months. Of people have somewhat settled into the new normal while we're waiting for vaccines and such. So this is what we're seeing at sort of a national level. However, at the local level, we are seeing some changes, some variations. So each market has reacted very differently to travel restrictions, or just how they're sort of kept in place, or what they've done, where the population has been moving within the market. And as you can see on these two charts, also from the Federal Highway Administration, seasonal patterns are a little bit different in urban areas versus rural areas. Rural areas have a little bit more summertime travel. And also looking at these charts, you can see that the rural areas have recovered quite a bit, but rural or urban, you're seeing a bit of stabilization versus pre-COVID levels over the past couple of months. Now, Geopath doesn't get its data from the Federal Highway Administration. We're actually leveraging mobile location data. And so we're able to derive similar statistics from that mobile location data to understand the travel patterns of the full population. And when we look at those patterns over time, we can see how things have changed. Now, what you're seeing on the right is sort of a population density map of how people have changed where they spend their time. And we'll get to that in a little bit later. But these mobile data sets are what has helped us understand how travel has changed throughout 2020 and how we expect it to recover toward pre-COVID levels in 2021. So at the national level, the average number of daily trips across the year, January and February, generally lower months of activity, going up a little bit, and the spring and summer, and then dropping down a little bit again toward the end of the year. And that's at a national level. Now, during 2020, we saw a very different pattern, similar to what you saw on the charts above from the Federal Highway Administration. We're also seeing a decrease in March and significantly in May and April, but a recovery and somewhat of a stabilization to those pre-COVID levels. Now, the number of trips that people have been taking is certainly one dimension of how travel has changed, but also where people are spending their time. Now, people still go to the store, but they don't necessarily go to the store on the way back home from work. So what we're also seeing is a change in the daytime population of where people are spending their time. So areas like Midtown Manhattan, where a lot of people go to work, those individuals are now spending the daytime hours at their places of residence. And so you're seeing a sort of a shift in the areas, even within Midtown Manhattan, of the Upper East Side, Upper West Side, and some of the Lower East Side areas where a lot of residential neighborhoods are located versus the commercial or business districts. And this resolution, these grids that you're seeing are little 1/10 of a mile grids that we can use to analyze activity over time from the mobile data. And we're seeing these similar patterns in other markets across the entire country. Chicago, seeing the sort of central business district having a decrease of activity, urban areas fairly stable, but once you get into the suburban areas and rural areas, even a little bit of an increase, even if the population density was somewhat low to begin with. Houston, similar pattern, seeing some of the downtown areas, big decreases, airports, big decreases of activity in those areas versus pre-COVID levels. Same with Los Angeles, downtown Hollywood, but in some of the more residential neighborhoods, an increase in activity where people are spending their time. Now, this is especially important for inventory, which is a high percentage of pedestrian audiences, or is visible from pedestrians walking by it, because it's these people that are spending time in their neighborhoods, walking around. You know, as I said, people are still conducting trips, maybe with a little bit less frequency, but those trip destinations are also changing slightly versus pre-COVID periods. So we know where we are today. We know where we've been through 2020. So what is the recovery that we are expecting throughout 2021? So starting the beginning of the year, we expect the, you go to the next slide. We're expecting the sort of offset, if you will, versus pre-COVID levels to remain through at least the first half of the year. So we're still going to be experiencing some of the seasonal patterns that we would see on a non-COVID year, we'll call it, or pre-COVID seasonality. But starting in the month of July, and we've seen this from other forecasts, be it economic forecasts or around the distribution or widely available distribution of vaccines to the general population or the low risk population, expecting that to be widely available beginning Q3. So recovery to pre-COVID levels beginning in Q3 into Q4. Now, we don't expect a full recovery by the end of the year to pre-COVID levels, but getting a good chunk of the way there. And again, every single market is going to be a little bit different. So here is some of the mobility data versus San Francisco pre-COVID versus the 2021 forecast. And as you can see, it'll be a little bit of a recovery throughout the entire year, even though that there's a decrease in the latter half of the year as the summer months go into fall and then winter, but the Delta versus pre-COVID levels is getting smaller by that time as well. And so there's going to be some increase even throughout the rest of the year. Smaller markets, more rural markets, as we saw, are going to see a little bit less difference from the get-go. So they're already starting close to pre-COVID levels. This is Asheville, also another example of Boise, Idaho, very close to pre-COVID levels. But as you can see, also having their own slight variation of what seasonality looks like in those areas. And talking about seasonality is going to be important when we release the impression variation dashboard this year, because as we have heard a lot of feedback from the experience in 2020, people were looking for a little bit more information. So if we go to the next slide. We'll still have the same information. We're still going to be providing average impressions variations with confidence intervals by market and by media product. This is still going to be leveraged, the near real-time mobile device activity each week. And so we'll provide a weekly variation metric. And they're going to be available and reported by CVSAs across the entire US, and then also non-CVSA or rural areas within states. And we're going to have updating the data weekly with the 2-week offset as it is today. So what's the big difference? What's new in 2.0? Well, one of the biggest challenges was that the impression variation report was the weekly variation, so the observed week versus the forecasted annual average. Again, this one number that we produce for an average weekly impression number. For 2021, as we saw in some of the charts earlier, there are seasonal variations that are inherent in the marketplace regardless if COVID existed. And what we are going to be basing that baseline against is, or the observed data, is the observed activity versus the forecasted monthly average. So that yellow line in the previous charts. So why is that important? Well, it's going to provide a much more precise view of forecasted versus observed delivery, because the variation is relative to the expected monthly seasonal delivery of audience as opposed to an annual, and that's going to reflect the media types in the market itself. So that's going to be a good thing. Now, as before, we want to make sure that there's a little bit of a warning note when using the impression variation report that these are market averages. In some markets, we have hundreds and if not thousands of some media types that are widely distributed throughout the market. And the impression variations are an average of each media type by CBSA, and they should only be used directionally.
Great. So I wanted to jump in and we'll talk about the rollout of the forecast and what to expect over the first quarter of 2021. So in January, so on Monday, the data will become available in the API on Monday, January 11th. And this will be with base audiences. So that's person 0 plus, as it says here, 5 plus, 18 plus, and 21 plus. Operators can also reach out directly to us, to your analyst, or even through Geek Out, and we can provide you an export of your data, of your 2021 data. So just feel free to reach out if you can't access it via the API. Another important thing to note is because of the trip patterns and how significantly they've changed, that also has caused us to want to go back and look at our reach frequency model and really update that based on the new travel patterns. And also this will also allow us to include an expansion of the reporting capabilities. I know we often get a lot of questions about wanting to do reach and needing to do reach frequency reports beyond 12 weeks. So this will allow us to expand that capability to 52 weeks. And also functionality during that time, we'll also be adding the functionality to the Insight Suite so you can access the 2021 data there, but also be able to toggle between 2020 data and 2021 data. That's the goal and ultimately what we're working towards and why there's the slight delay in getting it into the Insight Suite right away. And then as we look to March, we'll have full audiences available for the 2021 annual forecast. So full audiences with all metrics. And a couple things to note on the bottom here. So it's not just set it and forget it. We are going to continually monitor activity throughout the year. And if we find that the mobile data deviates from the forecast, we're going to reissue updates. And we'll let everybody know, we'll keep people aware of what's going on. But again, we want everybody to know that we are continually monitoring it throughout the year. And also you may have questions about transit. So 2021 transit forecast, so for scheduled fleet and station media will be, as well as the impression variation will be available, but it's pending committee review at this moment in time. So that's the schedule for Q1. And again, we'll keep you updated through newsletters, et cetera, as if anything changes or varies from this current schedule here. So as I mentioned way up front, we do want to provide additional support. So not just this webinar, we also are providing an overview document. Essentially walks through what we just talked about today and gives some of the talking points and explanations. So you can have an overview and some of the same tables and charts that we've just provided today. So that'll be available as well as FAQs. We do have a sense of some of the FAQs, but we also, like I said, wanted to use today to gather some additional frequently asked questions that we may not have been thinking about and really be able to provide some considered responses to your questions. And so everybody has these two resources available to them as you're getting questions from clients or from agencies or from whoever you're working with. So we wanted to make sure you had as much support as needed for this 2021 forecast. Again, as I said up front, we know this is kind of a unique year to say the least. We wanted to make sure everybody has as much support as they need. This webinar is being recorded and will be available very shortly in our Geek Out tab of our website. So you go to Geek Out, there's a screenshot, go to Geek Out and scroll down to our out of home office hours section, and it will be a thumbnail there that you can just click on and watch. I know there was a lot of interest in this session and maybe not everybody was able to get in, so you can definitely share this with any colleagues who might have missed it or who may have not been able to get into the session today. So I do want to allow you to, if you do have any questions, if there's something you think about after the session's over with, please reach out to us as always on geekout@geopath.org. That's another way to get your answer question or even provide a question there, and we can make sure that gets into essentially the idea of them get into the FAQ document as well. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining today. And well, again, we're going to pause for a moment. So I see some questions being added to the Q&A widget. So want to give people time to do that before the session ends. But again, no pressure. If you think of something afterwards, please email it to us and I'll go back to that slide, geekout@geopath.org. So I do want to pause and, just say thank you to Dylan for walking us through all of that. And, we really appreciate it and want to give you a chance. If there's anything else you wanted to say or add, Dylan, feel free.
No, just wanted to also say thank you, Scott. Thank you to all of our members for their support throughout the year. We recognize that it's been incredibly challenging, very uncertain times, but we have a much better understanding of where we are because of what we've been doing over the past 9 months, and very excited about being able to provide more utility to everyone this year. So hopefully everyone has a fantastic 2021, and we're here for you whenever you need.
Great. Thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of your day. We appreciate it again, everybody joining. Cheers.